people, no matter what they're doing, think of the trivia in the end. I can just see a lot of guys, the day the big atom bomb attack comes, he's running down the street, and he's madder than the Dickens, you see, because he forgot to get batteries for his transistor radio. It's the only thing that's bothering him. A lot of people, when we're confronted with a giant thing, we generally settle for fist fighting it out about a little thing. That's a fact. And so, here, did you read about this guy in Berlin here last week? 3 guys crashed one of the crossing points, 3 guys from East Germany. They rushed through, and the machine gun slugs are flying. It says 3 young men drove up under the guns of American tanks to a crossing point today between East and West Berlin. And the shells were flying and everything. And they got on the other side, and immediately, as soon as they got on the other side, they pushed the car back. And the reason they pushed the car back was the driver explained to newsmen that he had escaped from East Germany in his boss's car, and he decided he really ought not to keep it. I think that's a great story, that in spite of everything. And this happens often during war, It's really, during wartime, guys will be shooting at each other with flamethrowers. And in the middle of it, 2 guys will start fist fighting, 2 enemy soldiers, And one guy gets highly indignant because the other one kicked him below the belt. This is a fact. What a rotten thing to do. And it's a strange code of morality that runs through a gigantic sea of immorality. We are always confronted with this thing. It's the truth. Did you read about these guys that were getting squirted with the hoses? And so it was funny. I mean, it's an unfunny, funny situation. They came up to their command post, and the next thing they knew were 4 guys from the other side were squirting them with a fire hose. And these were the communists. They're squirting them with fire hose. Well, you know what a fire hose is. I mean, it does a lot of stuff. It pushes you around, among other things. So the 2 guys immediately threw tear gas at them. Well, then the guys with the fire hose retreated. Did you hear about it? They retreated. They hid. And then 2 more guys showed up to take their place, and the same thing happened. They threw tear gas. It's funny, and you're trying to tell me that guys secretly don't want war. Obviously, this was being ad-libbed. And for no other reason than that, it was there, that's all. That often a war is started merely because peace is there. Just like people will climb Mount Everest because it's there. Peace is no good unless you have a war. You understand what I mean by that? That health is no good unless you've been sick once. And you say, well, I was sick once, so I'm happy to be healthy all my life. No, you forget about being sick. You see, you got to be sick periodically. Very, very, very peculiar thing. Speaking of being sick, I'm going to read something to you that we read once before on the show, several times, as a matter of fact. And this is a recurrent theme today I'd say in not so much American life, but probably more American life today than any other single country, merely because we have better communications. We hear about more things. You'd be surprised that large sections of the world don't even know that the world is in any kind of a bad condition. Are you aware of that? Just because communications aren't good. And in many sections of the world, they are totally unaware that the world is in danger. Again, because there is little communication. And so naturally, they feel differently about the world than you do. Their attitude is much different. On the other hand, there are large numbers of people who, because of imperfect communication, have a distorted idea of how bad the world is. Communications are always imperfect. And they're imperfect on both sides. You can feel, 1, that the world is not in a very bad condition when it is. And 2, you can feel that the world is in a terrible condition when it isn't in as bad a condition as you think it is. Distortion again. See, distortion works both ways. Now, what happens when people are confronted, you see, with the insoluble? Very interesting problem. Are you aware of some of the Pavlovian experiments with mice and rats and dogs? Not only Pavlovian, but almost all psychologists have done various experiments that present the insoluble problem. the problem that seems to have a solution, but in actuality is not solvable. In the end, interestingly enough, I've seen a couple of these experiments, for example, with rats. Here's one. Typical example is this, that you ring a buzzer, and as soon as you do, you have a door at the end of the box, and the door is yellow. You ring a buzzer, the yellow door opens, the cheese is inside of the door. The rat goes and gets the cheese and is happy. You ring a buzzer again, 2 days later when he's hungry. The yellow door opens, he goes and gets the cheese. You do this until he begins to assume that whenever the buzzer rings, the yellow door will open and there will be cheese. Okay, at that point then, you ring the buzzer, you open the door, there's no cheese. Well, the rat will run to the door anyway. You see, he doesn't know it. So he goes and he looks, he says, what is this? He goes back and sits down. You ring the buzzer again. He jumps up and runs over there again. Nothing. On the third time, you open the red door, and inside the red door is the cheese. This time the buzzer rings, he runs over to the red door. Now, you do this until finally he assumes now it's going to be in the red door. Then suddenly you switch to the yellow door. And then one time, you do this, and there's no cheese in either one. But both doors open. He sits down, he looks mad, after running to both of them. Then, finally, you do the ultimate thing, which is the most interesting of all. You finally press the button, the buzzer buzzes, the doors open, and there is no cheese in either one. He sits down. Then you immediately follow that with pressing the buzzer, both doors open, and there is cheese in both. He won't take either. He just sits and looks. Because by this time he is incapable of a decision. He can't recognize cheese anymore when he sees it. That's a fact. Now you think that I'm kidding you? It's true. Unfortunately, it's true. And time again, this has worked out. You say it doesn't work with people? Oh, yeah? Oh, don't kid yourself, Dad. That you are jumping at a lot of cheese these days that wouldn't even have been cheese 10 years ago to you, and vice versa. That a lot of things that are cheese you're not jumping at, merely because what has appeared to be cheese 25 times in the past 5 years has turned out to be nothing. So in the end, you wind up with immobility. Well, so what happens, you see, when this is done over a certain period of time, a whole nation can become immobile because it can't tell what's good and bad anymore. Especially when the rat turns around and starts to excoriate himself for running to the wrong door. He blames himself, you say, in the end. And it's an interesting problem because we are all, in a sense, burdened with two things. One, a sense of guilt, which is, by the way, part and parcel of all men. If you know that, if you know that all men have a sense of guilt, you can use that and turn that sense of guilt into a positive thing. A very interesting problem there. However, that's another aspect of the problem. We will not even go into guilt tonight. That's in the next semester. However, the sheer effect of cause and effect, the sheer result of cause and effect, response and lack of response, is often the result of conditioning. And so you will assume a man is speaking sense merely because you have heard other men speak like this in the past. Just as the rat himself assumes that the cheese is behind the yellow door merely because it has been in the past. And all the aspects of cheese is there. The buzzer buzzed, the door opened. And many a rat will even react as though the cheese was there. He will salivate. And he's salivating to nothing but a sound, which is a symbol of cheese, but not cheese. Are you following me here? Oh, hey. Yes, sir, that's my baby. We're getting into some deep water. And you see, and another thing, too, is that people, just like, let's take music now. We can go into theories that have nothing to do with, let us say, with political things. Let's say subjective art forms. Now, you assume that because a man writes using the octave system of writing, 8 tones, and he writes in a linear fashion, which is to say he writes with a tune, that he is writing good music, or at least understandable music, and logical music. If a man writes using 5 notes, which is an oriental scale, a pentatonic scale, and uses a different system of melodic development, which is horizontal rather than linear, you assume he is writing insane music that is nutty and ridiculous. The reason being, of course, you have been conditioned to one and not to the other. And that gets quite complicated, too. And so, in the end, you both might be discussing music, but discussing music in completely different terms. Just like when the Russians say peace, they are not talking about peace the way you mean peace. Did you read James Reston's discussion of peace? Well, very interesting. The 3 types of definition of peace that are used in the communist socialist camp. The dynamic peace. You know what dynamic peace means? That means that peace is a kind of peace that means that as long as we can shove you around in any way short of war, and you will continue to retreat, that is peace. That's dynamic peace. That if we gain our ends without blowing each other up, that is peace. Our ends being you. Now that's peace. No, that really is called peace to some people. On the other hand, there is what they call a militant peace. Oh boy, that's a loaded one. Militant peace is the kind of thing, a fascinating kind of peace, which I witnessed, by the way, in one of the eastern countries, of 40,000 guys marching along with tin hats and flamethrowers on their backs, carrying a big sign saying, "We're for peace." That's an interesting kind of peace. Then there is the third kind of peace, which is literally peace, passive peace, which is Titoistic peace, in a sense. He just, there it is. They got a communist country, and that's the end of it. They're not about to hit other people on the head to create other communist countries. That's a different kind of peace, and that is looked upon as aggression by many people who believe in the other forms of peace. So, oh boy, you don't know which door is going up, the yellow one, the green one, the red one, the cheese is there, and the buzzers are buzzing, and in the end you just sit there and scratch. You do, literally. And so it gets quite involved. So what happens in the end is that the average person desires to withdraw from it all. Now, how does he withdraw from it all? Several ways. 1, he pretends it doesn't happen. 2, he says it's all highly exaggerated. 3, he buys a cabin in Maine. 4, he reads nothing but, let's say, the Saturday Evening Post, Reader's Digest, and he sticks pretty close to watching Gunsmoke. So he is able to convince himself, you see, and in a way he has philosophically built a box around himself. A box that is immune, you say, from attacks from the outside, philosophical or otherwise. So if you're watching Gunsmoke, this is perfectly safe, I mean, who can get mad about a gunfight that took place in 1870 in a town that never existed by 2 men that never were? You see, so this is a very interesting thing. So naturally, everybody watches these. It is violence, but non-violent violence. You know what I mean by that? If somebody could figure out a non-sinful sin, everyone would want it. You see? So we like to say we don't like violence, but we've been able to work out a non-violent violence play. Gunsmoke is a good example of it. Naked City is a good example of it. A lot of gunfire there, and a lot of people getting shot, but everyone knows they're actors. And they're going to get up and they're going to walk right onto the set of the next show. Nobody really worries about it. So it becomes non-violent violence. But it's still violence, incidentally. So don't say you don't like violence when you're watching Gunsmoke, because you wouldn't watch it if they didn't shoot. Even if it's blanks against non-existent characters and non-existent, they're still shooting. Like a friend of mine said the other day, he says everybody would immediately give up fishing if fish screamed when they were caught. Somehow fish can't communicate very well. It's interesting how the conservationists are always against shooting deer, but very few of them say anything about, let's say, catching bluefish. That deer seem to be more human than bluefish. They walk around on the ground like you do. I mean, you don't swim 400 feet below the surface like a fish. And so if fish could learn to scream, there would be no fishermen within 10 minutes. Now, and you say, well, it's the thrill of landing the fish. What if I worked out a device that you could that you could cast out there, and if you cast well enough, this device would attach itself to your line and would give you 4 times the fight of a bluefish. And you might even lose. You wouldn't go. Now, you say that you're giving the fish a 50-50 chance. Or are you? Are you standing a chance to lose? Have you ever heard of a guy that was pulled in by the fish and landed by the bluefish? I doubt it. You say, no, he has no chance. His only chance is to escape, but not to win. So he does not have a 50-50 chance. Not at all. In fact, the cards are weighted in your favor. Now, follow that. And this is coming, by the way, from a fisherman. So the things, it gets quite complicated when you really consider yourself what you really are and what you really want. It would be no fun fishing unless there was something alive on the end of that line that you could kill. Let's admit it. It's the truth. Okay, fishermen? Or are you going to tell me you let them all go? You are, huh? What kind of a traumatic experience do you think it is to a bluefish to get dragged out of the water by a hook? And you think you're doing him a favor by letting him go? What are you talking about? I'd say a good 75% of the fish that are let go eventually die as the result of the shock of being caught. This is a problem, too. And I'm not against fishing. I'm merely saying, what are we? See, we started out tonight, said, did you find out who you are? Well, did you? So in the end, now this is the thing. Don't go away. What a guy does, you see, is desire, when things get too involved, to literally build a box around him. Why do you think that more guys today are building homes in the suburbs than ever before? Things are getting too tough. And more guys are retreating to those boxes. There is a sense of safety as long as the lawn is out there and the shutters are around you. It may be false, but there is a sense of this. As a matter of fact, most bomb shelters are only that. They're like placebos. You see. You know what is it, a placebo? Well, here's a very significant little thing. Of our time, one day, do you know anything about the laws of probability of suicide? All right, I'll tell you something about that. Why do I know about this trivia? I don't know. I guess because I'm interested in life. And if you're interested in life, by the way, you become interested in death, which is another facet of life. Don't think it isn't. So you're fascinated by all these various things. Now, on the side of probability, do you know that an insurance adjuster can look at a victim of a disaster and can tell almost with absolute certainty whether he committed suicide or not, because there are ways of committing suicide people take. For example, it is almost one of the rarest of all suicides is to leap from a moving vehicle. That's a rare suicide. Are you aware of that? To do it to kill yourself. However, to leap from a window is another thing. That's one of the commonest. To leap from a stationary object. Interesting. Here is a note probably of one of the rarest of all types of suicide that just came in, and I think it's significant. Listen. Of our time, probably would never have been conceived 1,000 years ago. Syracuse, New York. A man whose body was found in an elaborately built plywood box in a hayfield apparently committed suicide by sealing himself in the box. All they found in the box was a flashlight. Somehow, within the box, yet he had to have light. That's an intriguing story. He committed suicide by sealing himself in a box. Yes. I waited till the large woman with the awful hat took up her sack of groceries and went out, peering at the tomatoes and lettuce on her way. The clerk asked me what mine was. Have you got a box? I asked. A large box. I want a box to hide in. You want a box? He asked. I want a box to hide in, I said. What do you mean? He said. You mean a big box? I said I meant a big box, big enough to hold me. I haven't got any boxes, he said. Only cartons that cans come in. I tried several other groceries, and none of them had a box big enough for me to hide in. There was nothing for it but to face life out. I didn't feel strong, and I'd had this overpowering desire to hide in a box for a long time. What do you mean you want to hide in this box? One grocer asked me. It's a form of escape, I told him. Hiding in a box, it circumscribes your worries and the range of your anguish. You don't see people either. How the hell do you eat when you're in the box? Asked the grocer. How in the hell do you get anything to eat? I said that I had never been in a box and I didn't know, but that would take care of itself. Well, he said finally, I haven't got any boxes, only some pasteboard cartons that cans come in. Sorry, buddy. It was the same every place. I gave up when it got dark and the groceries closed and hid in my room again. I turned out the light and lay on the bed. You feel better when it gets dark. I could have hid in the closet, I suppose, but people are always opening doors. Somebody would find you in a closet. They would be startled, and you'd have to tell them why you were in the closet. Nobody pays any attention to a big box lying on the floor. You could stay in it for days, and nobody'd think to look in it, not even the cleaning woman. My cleaning woman came the next morning and woke me up. I was still feeling bad. I asked her if she knew where I could get a large box. How big a box you want? She said. I want a box big enough for me to get inside of, I said. She looked at me with big, dim eyes. There's something wrong with her glands. She's awful, but she has a big heart, which makes it worse. She's unbearable. Her husband is sick, and her children are sick, and she is sick, too. I got to thinking how pleasant it would be if I were in a box now and didn't have to see her. I would be in a box right there in the room, and she wouldn't know. I wondered if you have a desire to bark or laugh when someone who doesn't know walks by the box you're in. Maybe she would have a spell with her heart if I did that, and would die right there. The officers and the elevator man and Mr. Grammage would find us. Funny doggone thing happened at the building last night, the doorman would say to his wife. I let this woman up to clean 10F, and she never come out, see? She's never been in there more than an hour, but she never come out, see? So when it got time for me to go off duty, why, I says to Krennick, who was on the elevator, I said, what the hell you suppose happened to the woman cleans 10F? He says he didn't know. He says he never seen her after he took her up. So I spoke to Mr. Grammage about it. I'm sorry to bother you, Mr. Grammage, I says. There's something funny about that woman cleans 10F. So I told him. So he said we better have a look. And we all three goes up and knocks on the door and rings the bell, see, and nobody answers. So he said we'd have to walk in. So Krennick opened the door, and we walked in, and here was this woman, cleans the apartment, dead as a herring on the floor. And the gentleman that lives there was in a box. The cleaning woman kept looking at me. It was hard to realize she wasn't dead. It's a form of escape, I murmured. What'd you say? She asked dully. You don't know of any large packing boxes, do you? I asked. No, I don't, she said. I haven't found one yet, but I still have this overpowering urge to hide in a box. Maybe it'll go away. Maybe I'll be all right. Maybe it'll get worse. It's hard to say. That was one of America's outstanding humorists, James Thurber. A real boff. And by the way, the box principle is also associated with extreme isolationism of many forms. There are many ways of building a box to hide in. And in the end, about all you can say is, maybe it'll go away. Maybe I'll be all right. Maybe it'll get worse. It really is hard to say.